Hello, welcome to Why Not Both. My name is Pam Schaefer, and I'm a musician and therapist in Los Angeles. Why Not Both is all about how our multiple passions inform our identity, and this season we are brought to you by Under the Radar magazine and produced by Laura Studeris. If you like what you hear, please make sure to like us and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform, and come spend time with us on social media. We are at WNB the podcast, and that is both on Instagram and on Twitter. It is our absolute pleasure this week to welcome Edoheart to the podcast. She is a multi-talented and multi-passionate artist, and I really hope that you enjoy the talk that we got to have together.
Laura sent over a bunch of your music, and I was listening to it all last night. And so, of course, I want to ask you about that. But mainly I was intrigued because you do an zillion other things as well. And so I'm like, I want to talk to you about all of it.
Super cool. Thank you. And thanks to Laura also. She's amazing, actually.
Oh, my gosh. Such a good human being. Like, she was the first music journalist who wrote about me. It's how we became friends, like, forever ago. I felt very validated. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Someone listened to the things that I made.
Yeah. That's something I was saying to her. I was like, people that their thing is just listening are so invaluable, and not as celebrated as they should be. I mean, it really is a talent, an ability, a skill, to just listen to people, and help people feel heard.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yes. And I like that you highlighted that like in every conversation, people trade off, but like a really valuable part is allowing people to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Already I'm like, oh, that makes me feel really special hearing that too.
You should. I had a therapist for about 7 years, and she's like amazing, and she's a big deal now. And so I have to share her with the world. I mean, she was always a big deal, but now she's like on Showtime and things.
Oh my God.
So yeah, so she's amazing. But, I would sit there and talk to her and pour out this and that. And, every now and again, it would just occur to me that these things were hitting a surface that is permeable.
Mm-hmm.
The body is permeable. Ears are permeable. I mean, obviously, that's the point of sound. I mean, that's why we have vinyl. We're etching these sounds onto a surface. And it just hit me like, I hope she's okay.
Oh.
I hope this isn't too much. I hope she's not too tired, and not to get all codependent-y, for real. I mean, like, not to go off the deep end into another thing, but just like thinking about that though, thinking about the work that people are doing, thinking about the work that people are doing that is not always as obvious as to the level of difficulty that, it actually takes to achieve it.
Well, and it's not like one would go about just advertising, I held space today. Like, you're not going to make that tweet.
Right. I mean, people should though. You know what? I tweeted a little while ago because I was like, this is what should happen. I was like, you know what? Kudos to myself for being nice to everybody. And, just holler to me. Good job, me. Yay, me. I think that maybe if we celebrated those basic human interactions more, if we made that more important, that there are people holding space for each other, listening to each other, doing the work of allowing a society that is full of people that are heard. Like if we were doing that more, some things might be different, I think everybody needs a therapist, basically.
I mean, I did see a tweet that like therapists need therapists and those therapists need Fiona Apple, and I did disagree.
I'm really, really happy Fiona Apple came back because like every other, you know, baby of the era, I just thought her music was and is so incredible.
Yes.
Um really, really well written. You know, I loved her writing, reminded me a little bit of Paul Simon's, just because they're two
Hmm.
people that just kind of talk about whatever's going on. And it's like some of the best poetry. People that are like, this happened on Tuesday. I was going here. This person said this to me. And I love it. I love that.
Yeah. That's actually, I hadn't made that connection. I listened to Simon and Garfunkel a ton as a small child, which made me really
Yeah.
popular. Um,
I bet it did.
oh yeah, people were really, really into that.
I bet. I bet. That's awesome.
But that storytelling aspect, and I like that. I was watching, oh my God, now I'm embarrassing myself because I was like, I was watching the video that you made where you're covered in cool hologram material.
Oh, snap. Wait, what's that? I'm always covering myself in something. Is that a Butoh video? It's one
Yes,
of the Fire Butoh
yes,
videos. Okay.
yes. And I love
Okay.
like you were telling a story in so many ways. When you said like storytelling, I was like, oh gosh, that really is like Paul Simon. And then I was thinking about what I was watching and I was like,
Fire.
yeah, you had told a story in so many ways. And I was like, that's fascinating to me.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was doing that Fire Butoh series at a time that I really wanted to embody language. You
Ooh.
know, I had kind of this movement from writing through to other genres of creative making of art making, and I hit the performance art
Mhm.
um arena, and I really wanted to continue embodying language, and Butoh was perfect. I don't know if you are, I feel like a lot of people are at this point, but at that time, Butoh, Ankoku Butoh,
Mhm.
wasn't as well known as I think it is at this point. It's always growing in popularity and awareness and so on. But I felt pretty proud to be bringing this particular aspect of language into Butoh. So talking in my pieces,
Mhm.
singing, performing, and having created my own soundtracks,
Yeah.
which I don't think anybody else was doing, and bringing in, some of the hand language that you see in, like Italian culture, and even in a more,
Yeah.
yeah, and like in a more distilled fashion, Indian culture. So the hand mudras and stuff that you'll see in
Mhm.
classical Indian dance and so on. Um, yeah.
That
Thanks for watching that.
oh my gosh, of course. Yeah, I was fascinated I'm gonna cough a lot because I'm allergic to trees, and there's a lot
Oh,
of
what?
trees outside my house, and it's
Oh
summertime.
my God. Oh my God.
I feel incredibly, incredibly, incredibly grateful for where I live during a pandemic. I'm like, yeah, I have the privilege of staying safe, and I'm like, I can stay safe inside my home minus the sneezing and coughing because there's trees right outside it.
Oh
But
my
like,
gosh.
aside from that bit, like,
That's super cool though. That's super cool. I live not too far away from a park also. So I get to do that too. But incidentally, I have 34 plants
oh my
in
gosh,
my apartment right now. Yeah, I used to want to be a botanist. It was the first thing I ever wanted to become.
oh,
Yeah, so I love the flora. I love the
yeah.
flora.
I was here like we're friends, me and the floor.
Yeah, we talk. I hug trees, and I didn't know it was a thing that people mocked. I just felt like they're alive.
Uh-huh.
They're listening. I love you. You know.
I can get
Um,
behind that. There was a book that a friend lent me about how plants communicate with each other, and I found that fascinating.
oh wow.
It was talking about especially like the root systems of trees, of
Oh yeah.
how they communicate about like where water is and where nutrients are and things like that. And so I think that that's perfectly reasonable to hug plants and to
Oh,
talk
that's
to them.
beautiful.
Yeah, it was just like,
That's beautiful. Have you seen the tests they do, or the little experiments where they'll keep one plant in a room and just like say mean things to it, and then keep another plant in another room and just say mean things or nice things to that one?
yes,
And they're getting the same light pretty much, and they water them the same and stuff. And the one that they're mean to just starts to like die and is
yeah,
stunted and stuff. Yeah. So um my daughter's always like, "Well, mom, can they hear you?" Because I'm talking to them,
uh-huh,
because
uh-huh.
I'm crazy. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm talking to them, because they're living things, and so I want to put good energy into their space. And she's like, "Can they hear you?" And I'm like, "I think so."
Uh-huh. Well, and that's so interesting what you said about like putting good energy into your space and also like acknowledging that things can hear you. A friend of mine was saying that he caught his daughter yelling at Alexa and realized that the reason she was like 2 at the time, was that he had yelled at Alexa and he was like, "Oh my God, I'm modeling bad behavior."
Oh, that's really funny. Oh my gosh. I know, right? It's um when you think about like Star Trek, which is also kind of a super geeky thing to have been into at some point. But like, I just realized when you said that I don't really remember anybody in Star Trek like getting really frustrated with the computer,
Yeah.
and being like, "Computer, I asked you already. I like, why aren't you doing that?" or something.
Yeah, they were very polite to their
They
technology.
were. They were. So that's interesting. Maybe that was a sign. Maybe it was a suggestion.
Yeah.
I
I don't
don't
know
know.
if it's just like the
Big piece.
quarantines getting to me, but I did get I finally got a robot vacuum because see aforementioned because of allergies, I'm like
Oh,
constantly
wow.
sweeping and cleaning. Um, but I really like it. And I realized on its like first little trip out, I was following it around so I could like teach it how to maneuver around things. And I was like, wow, I'm already forming an emotional attachment to my robot vacuum.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. That's what we are. That's what we do. We form attachments.
Yeah.
We're alive. We're people. We form attachments. That's what we do. And saying that right now, I'm of course thinking and feeling super down and distraught thinking about George Floyd's brother,
Yeah.
and how he, was giving his testimony in
Yeah.
front of Congress and saying, there's just like one part where he's saying specifically that he just wishes he could have his brother back. And it's particularly crushing to me in this moment that I think
Oh,
about just our human connection to each other and to those we love and stuff. And so I kind of just want to put that moment out there and be respectful to it, because I think that if nothing else, this pandemic is reminding us that we we are thinking, feeling, connecting creatures.
yes. Yes. And yeah, holding space for that, it's been heart-wrenching.
I can imagine. I mean, you have been probably, I imagine, maybe meeting with clients who wanted to talk about that with you, or we're having a reaction to it or something, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has, like, it's been my clients, it's been everybody. Like, I think that, what you said, we're connecting creatures, and to see cruelty in that way, to see connection cut off in that way, like, the only word that I could think of is heart-wrenching, is that, like, it goes against, like, what we do as people. Like, we're here to connect with each other, we're here to support each other, and to see something that flies in the face of that, like, I think everyone's upset is completely justified.
Yeah, yeah. And I think something that I'd love to see, and that I think your podcast is sort of a great pivot, or I don't know what word I'm looking for, an instigator for, is, I'd love if people saw the different inputs we have, saw more
Yeah.
of the inputs we have, right? I think the thing is, for whatever reason, and this is something that we talked about, a lot in grad school. I did my master's at NYU in
Mhm.
this weird interdisciplinary studies called performance studies that, um, it just has a lot of different fields in it, critical
Yeah.
theory on race and gender and, language theory and all this stuff, right? And it seems as though we've kind of gotten away from an awareness of ourselves in European American culture as intersensorial beings,
Ooh.
intersensorial creatures. So, because when we start thinking about this and then we think about loss or we think about joy, you know, then we start to recognize that it's magnified because we have all these inputs. So,
Mm-hmm.
and some of us, can see because, we also have to think that not everybody is abled in, different ways, but seeing and tasting and hearing and, all these different senses that are just different inputs, right? And so when there's a loss like that, it's affecting us in this magnified way. When we witness cruelty, when we're expressing our distress and things like this, um, there's so many places it goes into, and it's part of this whole why not both thing, because it is both. It's more than both. It's all the things all the time. um and that's really what we're experiencing. So okay, back to Butoh. So
No,
yeah, this
I,
is
I
this is
like all of these journeys.
this is this is how I am, Pam. But
Your galaxy
back
brain is
yeah,
seen by my galaxy brain. I love
listen,
this.
listen. So back to Butoh. Butoh's brilliant, right? It kind of showed up in 1960s Japan as this reaction to the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Mhm.
I've talked to some Japanese friends and been like, what was that time like for your parents, your family? What do people say? And one of my friends, this girl named Akiko,
Mhm.
specifically, I remember her saying, it's just a big blank. And so I kept thinking about the obliteration of sense and stimuli around an event this devastating and things that force us to lose language, lose the ability to communicate.
Yeah.
And so Butoh is super fascinating, right? It's sometimes described as this attempt by the Japanese at this time to rescue something that they thought was fundamentally human. And one of the things that people do when they are doing a Butoh piece is they are attempting to transform, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they want to become another state of being, of not being, just becoming something. You can do a Butoh piece in which you're a cat, in which you're a crazy person. Butoh is taken with madness and with horror. So there are pieces about Auschwitz, and it's also taken with stellar kind of a conversation. So literal stars and the moon and things like that. And
Wow.
the way a person crafts a Butoh piece traditionally is it's a poem that's written. So you're dancing a poem. And Butoh is perfect for me for this because I'm like, okay, I'm a poet. I'm not trained in dance, but I don't have to be because I'm going to come and be this poem. I'm going to embody this poem. I'm going to embody language, and language is going to cause my body to move. And so this is all going to connect full circle. When I started teaching Butoh,
Mm-hmm.
one exercise I kind of came up with was overloading a person with direction and with stimuli. And it's super interesting and it's super fascinating what happens to a person's body when there's an excess of communication, an excess of things to parse, an excess of things to say. It's like you watch somebody seized, you
Yeah.
watch someone floating, and um, gosh, I just think that sometimes that's where we all are.
Yeah, that what you just described of that overload, and when you were talking about being intrasensory, I do think that that's such an important thing to bring up. is that not only is it cognitive information, but we're gleaning so much sensory and emotional information. And especially now that there's such an availability of it, like I feel like so much of this has gone on for so long in our world, but now we're capable of seeing it and sharing it within like an instant. And it's like, how do we process it? And like you said, sometimes people seem like they seize up. Like it's too much to take in at once and process.
I think that's it. I think that, there have been these riots and, people are burning things and it's like, yeah, it's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has to, and I think like with the burning of things and with physical expression, there are some things that I feel are beyond words, that words are that it's not going to touch necessarily.
I love that you said that. Cuz I think that that also gets at this space of why not both? Um because we're really trained. I think we grow up and it's like there's a lot of focus on say what you mean. You tell your kid. I don't know if you have any kids,
I,
but
I am a professional crazy aunt.
oh, okay, awesome, awesome, close enough because we rely on those.
Oh,
But you tell the kids use your words. And I think it's important to recognize that there's more than words. There's just the body. Okay, I'm going to tell another horrible story. Forgive me, but sometimes it's important to put things that are real into this into the world
I
because I
wholeheartedly
think
agree.
it's good to be honest, right?
Yeah.
Because I think we want a world that's closer to what people need. S- So we need to know more what's around. But
Yes.
I was part of this program for a while when I was much younger, teaching poetry to kids in inner cities.
Mm-hmm.
Who were like from underserved backgrounds and the whole thing. And I remember I was teaching the second grade class, and they were like the most well behaved class I've ever been in. They were like such little angels. And I'll never forget how loving they were. Children are amazing. Um, but there was this one student who was a lot older than the other students, and he had just been really ill treated and maltreated growing up. And his parents had, or his foster parents rather, had like thrown him in a room and just kind of left him there. And so he hadn't really gotten to interact with people. Um, and he couldn't really talk. I
Oh,
don't I don't think there was anything wrong with his like biophysiology or whatever you want to call it, you know but he just had not gotten the ability
oh,
to transform his expressions and so on into conversation with other people. Like there was
yeah.
this practice, you know what I mean? Like it's a practice, like we have to do it, like all this stimuli and stuff, you know we get trained
Yeah.
by holding space, by recognizing that there's different ways of communicating, and it gives us all this gift of being able to interact with one another, and not be alone.
Yeah. Well, and neglect like that, like, can cause people to not necessarily never develop the ability to speak, but if you aren't stimulating those parts of our brains are basically wired to speak. And if you don't develop those parts just kind of lay dormant. They
Yeah.
aren't exercised. And that's so sad. Like that's why neglect can be so harmful.
Yeah.
In psych terms, it's called failure to thrive. It literally is
Wow.
just like the person is there, but it's like that hasn't been switched on essentially.
Yeah.
And so the components are all there, but it's oh god, it's so sad when I hear about that because yeah, that can happen with kids that are very neglected.
Yeah, it was a really long time ago, but he will never leave me. I'll never forget. And I think that that's another reason that I think about creating in different media, not just one. And
Mhm.
I feel like, that's how people affect affect you in more than one way.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it can be your words, it can be even your affect, like the way that you say things, like when people talk about, like even the concept of tone policing, things like that, where,
Oh,
but
wow.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
but I think of the fact that, tone is important, body language is important. Like there are so many things that portray your intent other than simply the words that you're saying. And so
Yeah.
there's so much nonverbal communication that goes along with verbal communication.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's super cool when you think about societies or cultures that have kind of codified some of that, like
Yeah.
with the hand mudras in, classical Indian dance, or like, Italian culture where like their hands are doing things, and it's a whole thing.
Right, or I think about with my friends, I warn them that I tend to have what I call yelling conversations through the bathroom wall, um,
Oh,
because gr- growing up in a Jewish household, that's how half of our conversations took place, was yelling to someone that you were in the bathroom.
I love it.
Like, so if I want,
That's
yeah. Like, I
that's
real
hilarious.
I realize I'm like, oh, this may seem like either A, I'm not paying attention because I walked off to the bathroom, B, I'm upset because I'm speaking in a loud voice.
Yeah,
Like I'd like to,
really.
yeah, there's all sorts of other ways this could be interpreted. And so I'm like, hey, let's talk about it before I accidentally like yell to you through the bathroom door.
And you take it the wrong way, right?
Yes.
Oh my God. Oh my God. No, it's like it's a real thing. It's a really real thing. I remember a situation in which I was in my apartment building, and my partner was playing really loud music, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I stepped out into the hallway of, right outside my apartment, and I'm holding a beer. And so I'm talking to my friend who's incidentally named Laura on the
Uh-huh.
phone. And I'm like, Laura, blah, 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 blah. And I look over the railing that leads downstairs because I'm, looking down to the,
Mm-hmm.
and I see these like police officers, like, kind of milling about. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And so I retreat back to the front of my door and I keep talking to Laura. And the
Okay.
cops come rushing up the stairs. And
Whoa.
it's very interesting because they had seen my body language in which I withdrew. And they were like, this person is doing something bad and is
Whoa.
withdrawing from us. I mean, it's just very interesting how people read body language and how there can be more than one thing that your body language means. So I'm like, hey Laura, this is weird. Let me call you back. Okay. So
Yeah.
I get off the phone with Laura, and then the cops' body language becomes super interesting because they circle me and they
Whoa.
start like closing in the circle. Yeah, I'm just thinking about this with people's body language and how people are communicating in different ways. And so I'm just like, so what's going on? And they're like, why did you run away? And I was like,
Whoa.
well, I didn't really, but I'm on the phone. So I don't know what you guys are doing. I just on the phone. And they're like, where do you live? And I'm like, right here.
Yeah.
I'm standing in front of my apartment
Or
door, which
or
is
home.
slightly ajar.
Yeah.
So I'm like, right here. And they're like, what are you doing in the hallway? And I was like, well, having a conversation with my friend. Um, it's just a little loud in there right now.
Yeah.
And they keep closing in. Like
Whoa.
it's very interesting. And keep in mind, the only people in the hallway are me and them. And there's like
Oh
four
my
of them.
God.
And so they keep like moving closer. And then I realized that they're trying to instigate some movement
Right,
in me.
because they're
Like,
encroaching upon your movement.
yeah, like I'm like they want me to like freak out or something. And I'm not doing that because I I think, why am I not doing that? I need to figure that out.
Yeah, because that does sound, I mean, I can feel
It's
like my
right,
heart rate is
right,
going up, like, listening.
right.
being
Right. So I'm trying.
oh my God.
Right. So I'm like, let me understand why I did not freak out at this point. And I think I didn't freak out because it was just absurd that
Yeah.
they were thinking I could possibly be doing anything other than listen, talking to my friend Laura in front of my apartment
Right.
door.
Right.
And so I was like, and so I was like, yeah, no, I'm just, and they're like, okay, well, you're not allowed to drink a beer in the hallway. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you sure about that? And
Right.
and they're like, yeah, no, it's the law. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. When did that become the law? And it's like, so they're closing in more. And then my partner like opens the door and is like, how long are you gonna be out here? Basically.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sees, he's like, where he sees the cops and he's like, oh, and they're like, hey, what's going on? And then they disperse. Like a light has been shone on them or something. They disperse.
Wow.
And the reason they disperse is because my partner is white passing. So I think they were like, oh, white guy. Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that what's in there for me is just thinking about body language and
Yeah.
how someone who seems like they're running away may just be busy. How somebody who seems like they're shouting through a bathroom wall at you because they're mad may just be literally far away from you and trying to make sure you hear them
Uh-huh.
and what they have to say. And thinking how we instigate reactions in other people with our bodies also, you know?
Yeah. Like what you had said about that when you're doing Butoh, you are telling the poem through your body and thinking about what you just said. Like those cops were also telling you a story with their bodies. Like that's terrifying. And that would incite you to feel like those feelings of, do I need to panic right now? Like I know that this is absurd because I'm standing in my own hallway. Like I could imagine though feeling the intent of that because that feels menacing when people are closing in on your space.
That's such a good word. I love that. That's a really good word, menacing. I love that. That's a really, really good word.
Thank you. Yeah, and your
Yeah.
description of it, I was just like, oh my God, because like of course you were going about living your life talking to your friend on the phone. Like I'm just like, and even like reading that intent into your action of running away because you had turned your back to walk back into your home.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's lots of ways to think about what things mean. And when I did this EP, this For the Love EP,
Mm-hmm.
that's not how I set out originally. I wasn't like I'm going to think about the different ways that we think about love or something. But as I was making different songs, it started to occur to me that that's another space in which there's so many different ways that we force people to move, so many different ways that we communicate things to people that could or could not be this thing called love. And there's so much art, I feel like, devoted to exploring that, because it's another one of these things that instigates such movement
Yeah.
in us and such feeling, in a totally intersensorial way.
Yes. Yes. One of my friends had just posted about that very thing, that she was talking about how the English language lacks so many words for love, and thinking about what a culture values by what words they have. And thinking
Mm-hmm.
about, even in like ancient Greek, there were multiple words for different kinds of love. And she was talking about like in Inuit languages, like all the words for snow and like things like that. We're talking about, well, what's meaningful to a culture? How many words do they have for it? How many shades of meaning? And thinking about how we not devalue certain kinds of love in our society, but simply don't speak about them because we don't have the words for them.
Well, that's a really good question. If you don't, and something that I've wondered a lot, if you don't have a word for something, does it still exist?
I mean, thinking about like our audio gear, we both knew what
Yeah.
the, like the weird black dome with the foam inside of it thingy that you put on your microphone. But that's not an efficient way to talk about things. Like,
So this is really interesting. So I come from this really, really old culture, right? Um, I'm African, and specifically I come from the Edo people.
mhm.
And there are, by like literally there are some accounts where, you know, people think that we may have been where we were almost forever.
Wow.
So yeah. So super, super old culture, right? And as a result, like a lot of the languages are really old. There's 512 living languages in Nigeria, but
Wow.
so lots of language, right? Because lots of different ways to say things.
Of course.
Yeah, but I've always been fascinated by how "I love you" is said.
Hmm.
Um, so in my dad's language, it said "mehoemowe," and in my mom's language, it's "ihwememe." I'm probably not saying it my mom's as correctly. I'm more familiar with my dad's, but
Mhm.
"mehoemowe," and I've tried to like break that down
Hmm.
um, to really understand what it's saying, and I think it comes out to "I have it that has for you."
Wow.
And I just think that's so fascinating. I could just like sit with that forever and be like, it that has, like it that has. That's what I have for you. Like that this thing of having versus not having,
Huh.
existing versus not existing. But having is like all about connecting, right? And
Yeah.
getting to be heard and and that's what I have for you. Like it's almost like it's an equation. It's mathematics almost. Having it that has for you is
Wow.
loving you. Um yeah.
And it speaks to that idea of, kind of when it like the totality almost of love is what popped in my mind.
I would hesitate to say a totality. I think I might want something that was almost more like oppositional binaries, and it was like
Ooh,
a yes versus a no or a one
cool.
versus a zero. You know what I
Got it.
mean?
Got it. Got it.
Yeah, like it's because it definitely is about a presence and an existence of something, you know, and but that it is, that it's there, you know, that it almost lives. I think about relationships sometimes as a thing onto themselves, separate from the people that are in it. Like
Yes.
there's you and me, and then there's our relationship, which is like
Yes.
this thing we're both having and working on and feeding or not. Some people are not feeding their relationships. But you get what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes. And that I think factors into loss, especially where not only do you lose the person, but then you lose all the
Yeah.
relationship, that thing that was there. That it doesn't exist with other people. Of course, you can form relationships with other people, but it will never be that relationship that you had with that person.
Listen, that just hit me so hard. Oh my God. Um, that's really heavy, actually. Thinking about there being this loss that is a presence, and that presence separate from the person or people you have it or had it with being gone is, you know, it's like when you break up with somebody or you split up or something, and people will sometimes say it's like a phantom limb.
Yeah.
um and then the other thing I've realized is that when you do break up with someone, the thing for me anyway, when a person is not there anymore, that I miss the most is things that I can share with them. You
Yes.
know, it's the giving. It's the, "Oh my gosh, I wanted to tell you about this," or "So and so would love this book,"
Yes.
or "I wonder if they've seen this." You know, it's just all this stuff that you wanna give, and it totally is this "it that has," because "it that has" is a pot that has stuff in it, and if that's what I have for you, then it's about these things that I wanna give you.
Yeah. Oh my God, I literally just visualized that even in my mind's eye. I saw like almost like this cute little cauldron of all the wonderful things that I liked watching with
Mm-hmm.
my friends. Like,
Mm-hmm. I think that's real. I think that's really, really real.
yeah,
I think that's real. Pam, I don't actually know. You know, I almost feel a little challenged by this podcast today to like there's a disjunctiveness from the place of heaviness that a lot of my feelings are in right now. Like
yeah,
I've been writing a lot of think pieces about um like I recently wrote a thing for an artist blog called The Face on the $20 Bill.
mhm,
Um and that piece is like about how African Americans have like done all this work for America, like for free, for the civil rights movement. Like, they've just like worked their asses off, worked
yes,
and been worked to death and all this stuff. And how like they don't even get to because those are my relatives, we don't even get to have our face on the $20 bill
yeah,
that George Floyd was like accused of maybe having like passing past a counterfeit of. And just thinking about how there's this like total absence of vestedness and ownership for Black people in America. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, and I feel like that's what hate is. That's what not love is. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, because if there is a pot if there's a beautiful cauldron, and I'm also thinking about the Black Cauldron, that book, and like how just like, did you ever read that?
no, now I'm
My
like,
God, it's an
I'm,
amazing series from like, it's by Lloyd Alexander. I read it when I was a kid. I was like into all that fantasy stuff. But the point is thinking about how there's this cauldron that when you love, you have for people and there's stuff in it you want to share. And I'm like, where is the stuff for the African Americans?
yeah,
What, like when, and the article I wrote, I hope people will check it out. Again, it's The Face on the $20 Bill,
hmm,
is just about how, like, Harriet Tubman, for example, and she's the one whose face is supposed to be like on there, but
yes,
the Trump administration is like, no, we're not doing this. Um, and so this woman who is like a god to me. I just am amazed by like her tenacity. I cannot conceive of just the amazing, like I can't, I'm in awe. So she not only escapes slavery herself, which is like already hard enough as a woman
right,
back then, especially
right,
like dogs and swamps and all this stuff. So she not only escapes slavery, then she goes back at least 70 more times.
mhm,
I mean, like, we are walking here. Do you feel me? Like walking on the legs, like walking, like long distances. Like, there's no airplane.
right,
And I don't even know what clothes is she wearing. How do you even get food? Like, you don't go to the local McDonald's and like order a burger. You get what I'm saying? Like, people are still grinding grain and stuff. And she does this at least 70 times, saves all these people, and then she works for the Union Army as a spy.
yeah,
Like, hello, I'm going to do more for these people.
mhm,
And I'm just like, she doesn't even get her face on the money. And like, you haven't given her shit. Like, that to me, not vesting people like in the plan that everybody else is getting to be in, like not giving these people a stake, some land, some ownership, something that is antithetical to love.
yep,
And I think that that's the hate that we're seeing the country like deal with right now. Um, I think that's it. I think it's about having it that has, and that they do not have it that has. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
And thinking about, I was watching a video that a woman had posted about specifically like the destruction of property, and she points out rightly so, this isn't our property that we're destroying. We don't have property.
yeah, yeah.
And that's the crux of the issue, is that in our culture, especially, property is personal value. And when
Yeah.
you devalue people, not just in your words, but in your actions and in their property, especially when those people are the ones who had built your society, like
I
that fear is
know.
justified. That's
Right.
that's like 110% justified. And I'm
Well,
like, yeah.
well, it also reminds me of this other aspect of Edo culture and the Edo people and the Benin Empire from which I am sprung. Um, that I think really relates to what your podcast is about too. So the intersensoriality of our culture um, also existed in relation to objects. So the way that we like our descriptors, our adjectives and stuff, our colors make sounds to
Oh,
us.
wow.
So the color red has a sound that goes the color black. So, red is ba, black is hui hui, white is fo fua. And, they have sounds that go with them.
Hmm.
And a lot of this stuff is lost and forgotten because we were colonized by the British, and they like literally like burned everything down and looted like thousands of artworks and all this stuff because this is a long history. It's not just
Right,
like they're like that's the thing, that there's this like reckoning, this whole deep thing, like very very long thing of like people taking and not putting anything back in the pot.
right.
So if somebody, an Edo person, were to wear an outfit that was like red and white and black, because of the sounds, like it would make the sound of thunder,
Oh,
and that's one example. And what that's to say when you stretch these things out is that objects actually speak. They make sounds. You get what I'm saying? Um, if I wear something and I've really given thought to it, it could be deciphered out as a poem, a statement I was making. And what this does, when you think about the fact that this is a culture, that this is a way that peoples have decided to structure their society as far as language and different ways of experiencing stimuli and so on. What that does when you focus that lens on some of the descendants of that culture, which lots of African Americans come from West Africa, where I'm from,
mhm.
when you focus that lens on that, I think that it starts to really make you think about objects and how they're talking to us and what it means when you pass this money around, this fetish commodity object that's got all this power, and not one single black person, not one single person of color.
Right.
I mean, like, I don't even have to stay in the realm of talking about Africans. I could talk about the Chinese building the railroads, and like they're not on the money.
Nope.
And I think that there's this like big pot in this country, and there's just nothing in it for all these people that have contributed. And it's exactly back to what you were just saying about burning things down, because those things are talking. These statues that people are tearing down, these buildings that people are burning, they're talking, and they're saying you don't matter to
Yeah.
those people. They're saying you don't belong here. You are nothing.
Yeah.
And it's pretty crazy to have objects telling people that they're nothing, that they
Yeah.
have no value.
Yeah. And to even thinking about even speaking that to a person, there are so many people that I think that even who say things like, oh, I don't believe in the rioting and why are they destroying things? They don't realize that the objects are saying that because they wouldn't even have I don't think courage is the right word, maybe audacity to say to someone to their face, you don't matter, but they will show that through their actions and they will show that through their statues and their objects and their art and their money.
Well, I think that there are lots of people that would say you don't matter. I mean, I've had people tell me that. I had an astronomy professor when I was in my sophomore year of college at the University of Michigan, I believe, who told me, "You're never going to be good at this. Just don't bother." Like Black people aren't good at this thing. So I think that I think that the audacity is definitely there. Otherwise, um, slavery wouldn't have happened. And it's descendants of Jim Crow and so on and so forth. And I think that if we go back to this place where there's more than one way of saying things, and that we talk not just with our words, but with our our bodies, our eyes, our music, and so on and so forth. Like, I don't know if you heard that Lady Antebellum is like, oh snap, our name is like, we should really think about it. We're gonna drop the antebellum, and
Whoa. One, no, I
yeah,
hadn't heard about that. And two, I'm
yeah.
glad that you did speak to the audacity, because I think that in a lot of ways, being white passing, I am shielded from that. And so you pointing it out to me is a good thing, so I can see it.
I love that you said that, because I have some of these same discussions with my partner where he is also white passing, and he's like, no, like, and I'm like, oh yes, trust me. Um, and, so I think that the audacity is absolutely definitely there. And, when I think about a band like Lady Antebellum being like, yeah, we're going to name our band after the time when all the Black people were enslaved.
Yeah.
And that's audacious to me. I don't know, like, I just,
Yeah.
it's a little audacious. And like, it's what's interesting is that they're like, oh, we didn't think about this that deeply. And like, right now on the internet, on Twitter, there's like all these Black people that are like, but we told you, and like, hello, like, I know that. And like, hello, and but I think that that's the thing, that like, the whole world is talking, everything's talking, there's lots of different ways to talk, the objects are talking, we're able to connect and make relationships with these objects, with these plants, with people, with like, and there's so many different ways of communicating, and it's all saying to these people, you don't matter. And it's like, when they're like, all right, well, we'll burn the shit down, I'm like, well, I mean, makes sense,
Yeah. Yeah.
understandable that you might be like, we got to get rid of all this stuff that's
I
telling us we don't
don't
matter,
matter. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes.
listen, we went, we hitchhiked the galaxy today, huh?
We really did, and that's my favorite thing to ever come out of this project that was started in the interest of talking to people who had multiple interests, but has spiraled into so much more. And I can't say enough how much I value your time today, because when we were scheduling it, I was like, this is a terrible time. I hope he's getting time to rest and decompress. And like, oh my God. Like, I was like, should I talk to her today? Should I just I was like, I'm sure she's overwhelmed and flooded right now. So the fact that you did take the time to talk so that I can amplify your voice, I really value that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. When I found out what it is that you do, I also felt like, whoa, she's working really hard right now. And I hope, like, I was just thinking, like, about the energy that you expend in doing what you do, and also thinking about your well-being. And I think that considered space holding is just what we have to do with each and for each other. But yeah, I have been super overwhelmed, and it's definitely a very, very hard time. It's like 2020 is not letting up.
No, whoever wrote 2020 was really heavy-handed.
Listen, like, I don't know if you've heard about the new mosquito thing. So like, I know we had the murder hornets,
Yeah, what happened to
and
the murder hornet subplot?
they're still out there. And the thing is, like, everybody seems to have forgotten about Zika. I have not. But in addition to the murder
God.
hornets, there's this new like mosquito thing that's like spiraling out of control. It's like called EEE. That's the acronym. It's like encephali something.
Oh my God.
And now that's like taking people out. And I'm just like, come on.
What?
Like, Where does it stop?
What? I'm
We're
like,
so tired.
seriously, I'm just like, what? No, we need to be out here protesting. Are we just going to be, okay, fine, I'll pass out sunblock and bug spray now. That is, that's what, yeah.
Listen. I know I've heard people make make the complaint or point out, listen, we were so worried about COVID. Why do people think it's okay to be out protesting? And I have an answer for that. And the answer is that there's an immediacy
Yes,
to the impending death that Black and brown people are facing in hospitals, on the streets, like literally in their own apartment buildings, talking to their friend Laura
yep.
on the phone. I think that there's and so it's sort of like, okay, I could die in 3 weeks from something else, or I could die right now, and from the cops. And so I'm going to protest that, because I think that when you have people like murdering each other in broad daylight on the street, that it's kind of like
That's
let's
more urgent.
let's yeah. But yeah, the whole, whoever wrote 2020, my God, like, I feel like it would never have been greenlit. Like, it would have been like, no, it's a little on the nose. It
This
just, it's like,
political match, it goes a lot of places.
it's just all over the place. And like, speaking of people that don't have it, that has, like, I'm I'm like, I don't even know what. Like, I heard that Trump is about to hold his like white power rally,
Oh yeah, in
like,
Tulsa on Juneteenth.
listen, on Juneteenth. And I'm just like, why is this guy even, like, come on, like, he's like 2020. He's like the perfect representative. He's like not even trying to hide it, you know?
That, like,
Yeah,
literally my brain just went like, "Oh, that is so spot on." He is the
yeah,
human embodiment of 2020.
he really is. Like, listen, has he stopped? Has he stopped? Have the people gotten a chance to stop protesting? Like, they were protesting his whole immigration thing, and it was like the most people that have ever protested ever on earth. And
Uh-huh.
now, it's just like going and going. And I'm just like, gosh, um, I hope that we all start to put things in that pot, and
Yeah.
that what we have for each other just ends up being so much bigger than anything that he's taking away. I hope that we, just do the math and get more, and that, it's just like he can't take enough away from us to lose what is supposed to be so brilliant about the American experiment.
Yeah, and I just had the thought that I was like, 1, white people need to restock the pot. 2, then we need to give things in the pot to other people. Like,
Yeah.
that's the point of stocking your pot, is not to just carry around a cauldron of all your things. It's so that you can give them to people. Like, that.
Listen, because the thing is, because it's back to what we were saying, when you lose a person in
Yeah,
your life. It's back to what we were saying, that what you end up missing is the ability to give.
yeah,
That's what you end up missing the most, is like, oh, I could have shared this. Oh, I could have had this conversation with them. Oh, we could have talked about that. Yeah.
yeah. When you were speaking about George Floyd's brother, that's what I thought of, like, just the grief that he must be holding, that like, her family is holding.
I
Like,
can't imagine.
yeah, and the outpouring, I saw, like, so many people were sending birthday cards, and I had, been sending donations, and I had been circulating petitions about the arrest of the people who killed her, and knowing that it's like, they can't give more, like, that person isn't there anymore, and so it's like, that's what we're fighting for, is that, like, we want to give to people, and we can't do that when they're taken away.
No, we can't. And there's been so many people that have been taken away. We just have there is this monumental deficit, monumental. And I do think that there are lots and lots of allies. Like, love has a lot of allies. I think real love is one of those things. I don't think our president is capable of love, but I think that real love is one of those things that when you have tasted of it, that you realize that it literally is what makes the world go round. Because otherwise, there's only zero. It's
Yeah,
one, and the opposite is zero. And zero is not living. It's an absence of living and being. And I would rather be than not be.
I know you can't see me, but I just nodded in agreement.
I hear that.
Yeah, I was like, I am very, very much nodding to that. I'm like, yeah, yeah. If the option is essentially existence or non-existence, like zero, not loving is not being.
Hmm.
That's very profound.
Hmm.
I'm still nodding.
Me too, actually. Now we're both just because I am nodding too.
I am forever grateful that having the idea to talk to people sparked this.
Well, I'm grateful to you that you thought about the fact that people are more than one thing and do more than one thing, and that you have held a space to talk to people about that. I feel grateful for that because it's been the bane of my existence in certain ways, because it's like, I've heard you do too much.
Mhm. Mhm.
We can't categorize you, your music, your whatever. There's just so much, pick one thing.
Mhm.
And I can't. I'm multilingual. Like, that's just how I was made. And the thing is, I think it's a blessing. Um it has helped me see and understand, and see not from like the ableist perspective, but I
Mm.
mean more comprehend,
Yes. Yes.
or witness. It's helped me witness more.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that though some people may be more multidimensional than others, I think that we all are. And I think that exploring that is valuable because we aren't all defined by one thing.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely.
Oh, while talking to you, you've also inspired me to move around. I've been like low key just doing like stretches and movements while I'm talking to you, which I don't usually do in interviews, but felt inspired while speaking to you.
That's so amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been thinking for a while that it would not be a bad idea for me to do a Butoh lesson for people on Instagram or something, because it can be such a cathartic and transformative um, art form. It's a real tool to kind of escaping the confines of our bodies and our minds, and a static perception of our environment. So I've been thinking that when I have some energy and feel called, that
Mhm.
that's something I may do.
Well, one, get some rest first. Two, I would love, love, love that when when
Yeah,
you do
awesome.
it.
Awesome. Awesome. That's sick. That's cool.
Yeah, I was like, you deserve all of the breaks right now, and also I'm really excited when you do it.
That is so awesome. I love
It's
it.
been
I'm
it's been really,
I'm
really cool.
yeah, I'm psyched. I'm psyched to be here with y'all today.
Oh, I was just like, thank you, and I seriously do wanna thank you again because, yeah, it's been a tumultuous time, and I think the tumult is obviously for extremely good reason, but that doesn't make it less tumultuous.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think it's kind of like that use your words thing too. Like we have to talk through it. We have to probe the different ways in which it affects us. And there has to be honesty and vulnerability also. Um in there. I think that we're realizing that there's something different about this time,
Yeah,
because there is no pretense right now at the flouting of established norms.
yeah,
There's there's none. Like, I think one of the army generals who kind of walked Trump across the Black Lives Matter Plaza or wherever he went by
Mhm,
in
mhm.
order to go do that photo op in
Oh
front of
god.
St. John's Church.
Nauseating.
He just apologized. He was like, um, the military in this country is really supposed to be maintaining this apolitical, like, thing that's like about protecting the people of the. I mean, what is the country without the people? Hello,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I think it's like, wait, tear gassing priests?
yeah.
Excuse me?
How does that
Shooting
protect someone?
shooting
What?
shooting priests with rubber bullets? I mean, there's this, like, this is not normal. I mean,
No.
it's just not normal. And there is a lot of crazy violence in this country. And I'm like working on this other article right now that's just drawing the connection. And some of the research I've had to do has been about the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh my god.
And when you read about the stuff that they did to people, you're like, "Oh, that sounds like what we're watching police and our
Yeah,
president do to people." Okay.
yeah,
Okay. And the interesting thing about the Klan is that yes, they targeted mostly Black people, but they were fine to go after white people too,
oh yeah.
if they were supporting Black people. So
Mhm.
and then there's this whole, like, perversion of, like, religion that's happening with them too. And
Yes.
it's like, okay, so tear gassing priests, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Like, this is something y'all would do. It's bizarre. I think we're watching this, like, diseased, like, member or something, just kind of like all the pus is exploding, and we're
Yeah,
like,
it reminds me of seeing, like, I don't know how to describe it other than like a diseased temper tantrum. It's like
"Oh
watching
my god."
it's like watching someone, like, that you've told no, and so they think if they tantrum that you will say yeah. It's like the last burst of whatever awfulness they think is going to accomplish their goal.
Yeah, 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 not knowing that, it's doing the exact opposite, that
Yeah,
we're all horrified,
yeah, we're all just
um,
like, so we're protesting police brutality, and the police response to
peacefully.
that is brutality.
Right,
I'm like,
right.
what? Yeah, because they, like, I never thought that I would utter the phrase, my friends filmed police ambushing protesters from the CBS lot at Beverly and Fairfax. Like, never would I have thought that I would have uttered that sentence.
Well, I never thought that I would have heard or read the president basically instigate, essentially, the shooting of American citizens. Like, I
Yeah,
there's just not it's just not the thing that you generally see. But I think that Trump's campaign, it presaged this. And I think the difference was some people were really listening
yep,
and some were not.
yep.
And some of those who were really listening were about it, you
That's
know?
I think that you just, like, hit it on that some people, there are several people I know who had voted for Trump and who have apologized, which I'm like, "Cool." I actually appreciate it when someone admits
Yeah.
they were wrong, as opposed
Yeah.
to the American ideal of doubling down on being wrong.
Right.
Like,
Right.
kudos for that. I'm like, "Okay, you did an oopsie." But then there are people who genuinely actually are fired up by his platform
I
because that is
know.
what they believe. Like,
Oh
there are
my
people who
god.
hear it and recognize it for what it is and are on board for it.
I think that's the thing though, I that's the painful, confusing part of so much of this, that at the end of the day, all this useless division based on skin color and this, fraudulent thing that doesn't really exist biologically, called race and
Yes.
gender. And, like, I think that's the crazy and sad part, is that it's really just about separating
Yeah.
all these people who should really be united in their common, desire to have enough.
Yes, and
you know,
to have baseline, I guess,
needs
like,
met.
yes, like,
Like, I think
yes,
that's the sad that's the really sad part is that you have, angry poor white people that are like mad and like, go Trump. You have some there's some African Americans that are in there supporting Trump.
yeah,
There's a handful, a sprinkling, and it's absurd. Um but it's all just sad, and I don't know how you explain to those people, um, I don't know what people need to develop empathy for someone else's suffering before that suffering reaches them. You know what I mean? It's like so many people
yes,
are like content to let somebody else suffer.
yes.
And then when it gets to them, they're like, oh, wait, this is bad.
That brought up, I was talking to a friend of mine who just started going to one of the groups for Black Lives Matter, but it's specifically for white allies in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Um, and because she was saying she's just like, I want to learn to be a better ally and I want to do multiple things, but I need to learn more. And I was like, cool, cool. But she said something that one of the facilitators said that you have to, in some ways, encourage people to find a personal stake in a
Wow.
movement so
Okay.
that you can foster empathy.
Oh,
Because if
wow.
people don't have a personal stake, they will lose energy, they'll lose focus
Interesting.
on it because there's only so far that their empathy will stretch. And so
Interesting.
and so she was having people share stories of like times that they felt outcast or they felt devalued or things like that so that
Hmm.
she could then analogize it to how people are feeling. And I thought that that was a really interesting recognition of the fact that like people want to sometimes feel empathetic but might not even be able to access it, and it's like, well, how do you tap into that? Like, how do you spark someone to feel that empathy?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
it's like,
How do you recognize that this is also your problem?
yeah, to spark those mirror neurons, it's like you have to remind them of like, hey, remember that time you were in pain too?
Right, right,
That's
right,
yeah,
right. Well, you know what? You know what? What that reveals a bit to me is that we have not concretely articulated yet the movement for the civil rights of Black people, in terms of human rights that we all
yes,
want. I think I don't know if it's supposed to happen in a civics class, so we all grow up knowing it or something, but there are so many rights that we have in America now that directly came out of the civil rights movement. And it's
yes,
like, it was a big favor that they did for us. And um it's interesting thinking that it needs to be spelled out for people sometimes, but it does make sense. It does make sense. This is the space in which I also feel super lucky, and the reason is because for the first 7 years of my life, I was living in a predominantly Black country.
mhm,
And, the reason it's important is because I got hard coded and hardwired to exist without racism. So that's my without experiencing it. So that's my
right,
baseline.
right,
My core is not feeling less than,
right,
and so then when you come to a country where that's just what they do over there and that's what they're based on, that's what they're founded on. I mean, first slave ship comes to America, lands on these shores in Virginia, I believe 1619, and Mayflower Compact or whatever
mhm,
1620.
mhm,
It like predates the thing of this
yeah,
country. It's like it's the thing. It's like they had it in hand when they came over, and it like
mhm,
built the country. And when you grow up without that, it can be very, very visible. And it's definitely just something that has robbed my life of tons of opportunities. You know, you come to America, and if your skin is dark enough or whatever, you will just experience, a lot of racism pretty much. Housing, I mean, it's just like it's endless. Um,
yep,
but yeah, but still having that 7 years
mm,
where what having brown skin, having black skin did nothing,
Right.
um, is very, very, it's very important. It's
I
very
was gonna
lucky
say, and
for
that's
me.
like the formative years of someone's life, like the
Mhm,
first few years of your life.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Wow.
It's yeah, it's super lucky. It's super lucky, and like I think that I see Africans sometimes. I see a lot of Africans not really understand the African American experience, and that's part of it.
Yeah.
Know, it's like you're just not experiencing it and you're like, why aren't they successful? Why aren't they all making it? Like they must not be working hard enough. They
Right.
must
There's that core that inside of
right.
you. If you're told from the moment you're born that you don't matter versus being told that you do matter and that it's not even a factor, and then encountering you don't matter, that would then, I would imagine trigger in you a feeling of like, oh, but I do. You're telling
Well,
me I don't, but I know that I do.
yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing. It's a different. The plant is healthier
Yeah.
in essence, but what I will say about that is that it's certainly I think been challenging for a lot of white people who were in positions to give or not give me opportunities. Um, I think that um, being someone who fundamentally understands myself as equal
Yeah.
has definitely been scary to some people who it's like, well, that's I don't feel comfortable with that. People feel like they're losing something if somebody else gets as much as they do and they're used to getting more.
Yes.
They feel
Yes.
like
It's that.
they're
Yes.
losing something.
It's that adage of like when equality looks like punishment because you're used to you're used to having everything.
The thing is, when we are giving, and part of this is like that gift economy theory and stuff, but part of what's happening when we're giving again is we're getting to enjoy something. Like I love
Yeah.
when I can donate to something. That
Yes.
makes me feel good, to
Yes.
tell you the truth. That's some of that's just for me. A lot of it is for me. Like I gave money, I feel happy, like I'm
Yes.
doing something that is good. Um, and so I think that there's that, and that, yeah, you don't want to boast, but the problem is also that a lot of people who don't love don't understand how many more of us do love.
Mm,
And so maybe unfortunately we have to kind of start talking about what we're doing so that it's just obvious how much is happening. I mean, I don't know. I don't know because I see how it's good to recognize that we're doing this for ourselves when we give. I'm helping make the world better for myself, for my kid, for her kids, but then also maybe people need to know that they're not alone in their struggle. That
yeah.
you get what I'm saying? It's hard to know. Maybe it's about a conversation, like maybe that's what it's about. That it's about conversation and communication
Yeah.
specifically, and that people that you do have to tell people I love you. They
Of course.
can't just know. Um,
Yeah, I think that that's so interesting. Like, I don't know if you've had this situation, but sometimes, especially dudes, will say to me like, "How did you not know that I liked you? I
oh my
did
god.
this, that, and the other thing." And I'm like, "You didn't say the words 'I like you'?" Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that there are just times that call for the unequivocal statement. There are times, and I think Black Lives Matter is one such statement, you know,
yeah.
that it just needs to be unequivocal. We need to make that statement, you know, because and this comes down to the performative abilities of language. Like a judge sits somewhere and says, I pronounce you like married or whatever.
Mhm.
And now it has been done. It's happened because they said that, and the
Someone
language,
said those words.
yeah, the language transformed something. And I think that there are other situations that call for that also, in the world. How about we just put the people on the money who did all the work for the country, put their names on the buildings, and give them their fucking money for all the work they did, and fix the laws and all that, and get rid of all these cops? How about we do all that, and then we're going to get to stop worrying so much about who said what?
Yeah.
How about we make those things real?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we're also just all being forced to examine ourselves and what we've been doing and how our actions have contributed or not contributed. And the thing is that love is a verb. It's active. It's active. And so's allyship. And so's the work of anti-racism.
Yes.
And so I think that I get people wanting to see things being done. And, we're just going to have to keep proclaiming until freedom is ringing from everywhere,
Yes.
Thank you so much, Pam. I appreciate
Aw.
you.
Thank you, Edo. I appreciate you too. And I'm so grateful that we ended up getting to talk.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Why Not Both? If you liked what you heard, please make sure to like us and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. You can also come hang out with us on social media. We are at WNB the podcast, both on Instagram and Twitter. This season, we are brought to you by Under the Radar. Under the Radar is a nationally distributed print, music, and entertainment magazine and website. You can find them at www.undertheradarmag.com and feel free to support them on Patreon. Extra special thanks to our producer, Laura Studeris, who has been absolutely amazing. Thank you again, and I look forward to next week's episode.